Hello, welcome to the channel. My name's Teeter, and today we're going to go over how to do parlor puzzles in Blueprints. The rules for the parlor puzzles can be found on this table alongside the wind-up key on the second page of these notes. The puzzles contain 3 boxes, and among them, there will always be at least one box which displays only true statements, there will always be at least one box which displays only false statements, and only one box has a prize within, the other 2 are always empty. So, what this means is, in most cases, if there are 3 statements across the boxes, 2 of them will either be true or false, and 1 will be the opposite. So they'll have 2 true and a false statement, or 2 false and a true statement. There are cases where one of the boxes will not have a statement on it, will be blank. And in those cases, one box has a true statement, and one box has a false statement. The goal is to read all the statements on the boxes and discern which ones are true and false, and use the information gathered to decipher which box contains the gems. So, I am here on day 18 of a save file, because the puzzles get increasingly more difficult as you continue on, and I wanted to go over some examples that maybe aren't the most obvious or maybe a little difficult. The way that I personally like to go through these puzzles, and I find is the most effective way to do so, is I will read each puzzle or each box individually, and I will try to decipher, just based on the message by itself, whether or not the box is true or false. If you can't determine one way or the other, then you move on to the next box. The goal there is to try to add to your count of 2 true or 2 false in, the 2-1 split. So if you can determine that one box is true, then you're a little bit closer to figuring out if 2 are true or 2 are false. If that doesn't work, I like to then look at an individual box that I don't know the true or false status of and say, if this is true, for example, can I get a 2-1 split or narrow down to a single box, if we just kind of hinge the logic off of the one box being true. And if you can't, then you try the opposite. You say, if it's false, can I do the same thing? And you can usually find your way to the solution. So without further ado, let's give this first one a shot. The other 2 boxes are true. Is this objectively true? Well, I guess you could say we don't know. However, if the other 2 boxes were true, this would become a true statement, meaning we would have 3 true boxes. That cannot happen. So objectively speaking, you can determine that this specifically is not true. Because if it were true, it would cause a conundrum where, we're breaking the rules of the game. So this box is objectively false. Moving on. The other 2 boxes are blue. Well, this is also false. So this might be a little bit easier than I thought. Because we already have 2 false boxes. That means that this last box is true. The other 2 boxes are empty. So this box must contain our gems. Honestly, doesn't get much easier than that on day 18, but we'll go ahead and skip to another puzzle and go over some more examples of these, just so we can kind of go over the same process of figuring them out. Okay, here we are at another parlor. Let me go ahead and grab my key. Starting with the blue box. The gems are in a box with a statement. Well, one of the boxes doesn't have a statement. So, we'll have 1 true box and 1 false box. Can we tell if this is true or false on its own? Not quite, because for all we know, the gems are in the box without a statement. So we can't determine whether or not this is the true or false box. The white box does not have a statement. That's true. You can see that from here. So because this is true, this must be false. The gems are not in a box with a statement because they're in the box without a statement. There we go. These are continuing to be pretty easy. Let's go on to another example. Okay, new day, new puzzle. The gems are in the white box. We can't tell if this is true or false by itself, so we'll move on. Statements with the word white, including this one, are always true. This says white. This says white. statement on the white box is true. Okay, so this suggests that all 3 boxes would be true, which can't happen. So this is a lie. And I guess that means that this is also a lie. The statement on the white box is true. We've already determined that it's not. So this is false, this is false, this is true. The gems are in the white box. So we have a couple examples, or I've had a couple examples, where you can determine if something is objectively true or false, but it does kind of require that you reference each of the boxes together. Because we couldn't find out if every box said white until we looked at every box. Anyway, another easy one. Let's find a new example. Alright, here we are on day 22. Only 1 box is true. This could be true. This could be false. Maybe 2 boxes are true. We'll find out. The black box contains the gems. The blue box contains the gems. So, only 1 box is true. I guess we can rule this out objectively now that I think about it, because if only 1 box was true, it would have to be this one. Well, I guess it could still be this one, because if this was lying and this was lying, it would point to the white box. So if this was the only true box, then you could theoretically get to the white box. But let's pretend that this is false, and one of these other ones is false. Blue box contains the gems, and oh no, I'm sorry, we can't have 2 that are false, because this would say only 1 box is true. So I guess that means that we already know our answer, because it would have to be the white box. Because the only way for this to be true would be if this box specifically was the only one that was true. If this was false and multiple boxes were true, then the only 2 boxes that could be true are these 2 boxes, which conflict. The black box contains the gems, the blue box contains the gems. So this box can't be false. And if only 1 box is true, and that would be this box, then the black box does not contain the gems, and the blue box does not contain the gems. So it would have to be the white box. So that one was a little tricky, but I think it was tricky just because I didn't immediately rule this box out, which you can't do, because again, the only way this could be true is if this box was the one that was true. If this was false, then both of the other boxes would have to be able to agree with one another, which they, in this case, did not. Let's do one more example. Or maybe we'll do 2 more examples, because this one's worth going over, but maybe not the most intricate. The gems are in this box. Objectively, can't tell one way or the other if this is true or false. The gems are in a box next to this box. That could pretty easily be true unless they're in this box, so we can't know for sure. And the gems are in the blue box. Let's see what we can do here. If the gems are in this box, the blue box, this is true, and that is true, and this is true. Because the gems are in this box, the gems are in the blue box, the gems are in a box next to this box. So this can't be true because it points specifically so that all of these boxes are true, and that cannot be. So this is false. The gems are not in this box. Thus, the black box is also false. The gems are not in the blue box. Since those statements are both false, that means this statement is true. The gems are in a box next to this box. But they're not in the blue box, as we've determined, so they must be in the black box. Bit of a mind trip, this one, but we got there in the end. Let's do one more. All right, one more. Only one statement is false. This could be true. This could be false. Only one statement is true. This could be true. This could be false. These two conflict with one another, so one of them is true. The other one is false. The gems are in a box with a false statement. If this is true, then we would have two true statements, and this would be false. That's valid. If this was false, the gems would be in a box with a true statement, and we could satisfy that with one of these as well, so that would also work. So let's try this a different way. Let's try looking at this. Let's say this is true. Only one statement is false. This is true, and thus this would be false, and this would be true. The gems are in a box with a false statement. That puts the gems in the white box. It narrows it down to one box. Let's try the opposite. Let's say that this is false, and two statements are false. Then this would be a false statement. This would be a true statement, and this would be a false statement. The gems are in a box with a false statement? No, they'd be in a box with a true statement, which again points us to the white box. In both cases, we were able to find our way to this box just by saying whether or not the first box would be true or false. Sometimes you'll do that and it'll lead you to a dead end. If it leads you to a dead end, then that box obviously cannot yield that result. So if you flip it and then you test it, usually you'll find your way to a box. I think that's enough examples for a short video like this to go over the concept. But essentially, I'll go over, again, what my strategy is. I try to look at each box individually to tell if they're true or false. That will add to our count of either 2 true or 2 false, and 1 false and true, respectively. As we saw earlier, if one of the boxes is empty, then you're looking for 1 true and 1 false among the boxes that have statements. But your goal is essentially just to find 2 false or 2 true and 1 of the opposite, and then from the information on them, make your way to the box that had the gems. Hopefully this was helpful. If you have any questions or any specific examples you want answered, feel free to put them in my comments. Tell me blue box says this, white box says this, black box says this, poor K. And I will go ahead and respond to your comment, probably same day, to help you answer. Although, you know, hopefully it would be quicker than same day because you would need the answer during your run. But anyway, I've been Teeter. This has been my explanation of Parlor Puzzles in Blueprints. If you like this content, please feel free to check out the rest of the content on my channel, as well as coming on by my Twitch and YouTube streams, where lately I've been grinding day 1 runs in Blueprints, trying to get to room 46 on a very fresh save file. I've been Teeter. I thank you so much for watching, and until next time, I hope you take care. Bye now.